All right, we're back. It is COMP1004. That's Rapid Application Development here at Georgian College in the fall 2016 semester. We're week 3, part 1 of our broadcast. I'm going to be talking about some fundamentals, but I'm not going to reteach the fundamentals because that doesn't have any value for you, right? I'm also going to be building up a new form today, which is part of your lab 2. If you notice up on Blackboard, there's a lab number 2 that's going to be due tomorrow night at midnight, right? That lab 2, all I want you to do is build a splash screen or splash form that we're going to be doing today. And I want you to practice because there's some finicky bits to it, right? How to build a splash form with Visual Studio and Windows forms, right? So we'll talk about that today. So I'm kind of paying you for it. It's 2%, paying you 2% to do the splash form. And then if you include your splash screen in your assignment number 1, and other assignments, there's going to be opportunities for you to get bonus marks again. We use splash screens in general, just to, kind of as an aside topic, to kind of indicate when something is loading, right? Now you can make it as really nice as you want. You can make your splash screen that basically just loads up, and then it kind of says, it kind of has your logo on there and everything else. I'm going to be using it for that, from that perspective going forward. And then during your exam, definitely, which is on week 7, of the semester, so a few weeks from now, basically, or 4 weeks from now, you're going to be doing a splash screen and a multi-form application. So we're also going to be talking about multi-form applications today. How do I go from one form to the other? How do I move around? How do I navigate between forms? Because really, I've never seen an application that's, one single form. It's very rare. All right, so let's talk about some basics, and then we'll get to the other things. I'm not going to read every part of this. This is how to work with numeric and string data, right? So I want you to look at this this PowerPoint as the stuff that you should know if you did Java, right? So I'm not going to reteach this part. Like what the variable or the data types are called might be slightly different. But one thing is when we use the Common Language Interface, right? The CLI is what it's called, right? When you learn things with C#, it's the same data types for C++ and VB, right? So as long as you use Visual Studio, these same data types, the names of the data types are used in these other programming languages. So that's what Microsoft has done, and also in ASP.NET. So if you're using the .NET version or the one that we're using today, which is the Windows forms, these same data types are what they are. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I mean, you guys should know what these are. So integers and singles and doubles. They do have a decimal, and again, you can use a decimal type. In Java, they have slightly different data types, but definitely a decimal is something that you probably want to use if you're doing any kind of number calculations. And this is the keyword that's involved. So the keyword's on the left-hand side, and then what it is, the .NET type is on the right. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that. How to declare a variable, how to store stuff in variables. It's all here in the PowerPoint. One of the keys are, though, with C#, if you have a data type, for example, that is a floating type, you need to use the F character to indicate that it's a floating point type, as opposed to double. And we'll talk about that a little bit. It's a bit of notation that you have to add in with your literal. So let's say, example, I'm assigning a variable, and the variable that I'm going to assign a value to the variable name, whatever it is. And if it's a floating point type, I have to say, if it's a 1, if I say float my variable is equal to 1, you can't do that. You have to say my variable is equal to 1f, right? So keep that in mind. Sometimes, especially when we do stuff with C#, and if you're coming from Java, it causes a little bit of confusion. Why the f? Right? You're like, why f? Because it basically says it's a difference between the literal now is cast. That's what you're doing. You're casting it as a float, as opposed to a double. And there's a difference between a float and a double in terms of, a series of precision digits. How much precision you're going to get out of it, right? If you think about it, a float is single precision, real number, and then a double is double precision, which means double the length of the in terms of numbers after the decimal point. Arithmetic operators are the same as all C-influenced languages. I'm not going to go over that. Some of the stuff that's from an increment decrement perspective, plus plus and minus minus, you're going to see those things used often. Again, in the more modern programming languages like Swift, that's just come out, they've removed this. So they don't have plus plus and minus minus anymore. They discourage this use. They'd rather use the shortcut operator plus equals to 1 for plus plus and minus equal to 1 for decrement, right? So you might see those operators as well. Please stop me if I'm going too fast or if you don't know operators or something like that, right? You should know all this stuff. So there's some really good examples, yes?
Do you care over these?
No. Does it work? It's good. I'm good to go, right? I'm not going to force you to use a certain programming style. I'm not going to review your programming style so much in this course, right? Can you make it work is going to be the answer. I might look at it and go, when I do my check with you next time, I might go, wow, that's darn ugly. I might say that to you, right? Doesn't mean that there's no opportunity for you to improve it, right? I'm not going to tell you that, right? Like there's always different ways of doing something, and as developers, we get better and better at that. How do I make it so that it's easier for me, to program as I go? It's experience, right? So again, examples of arithmetic expressions that use integers. I'm not going to go into that too much, but again, you can certainly look at here if you look it up. Notice the decimals use the M, right? So instead of the F for float, decimal M. That's what it's going to be. Here's the shortcut operators. That's what I like to call them: plus equals, minus equals, times equals, and so on. Same for all C-influenced languages that are out there today, including JavaScript. Typical assignment statements, nothing new here. I'm just going to skip. So again, you see the M's. That's indicating of a decimal type. And other, this is right from the book. That's why I'm not going to go too much into it. And some people don't have this. Okay, conversion. Something I need to talk about a lot of times is people convert from something like a byte to a short to an int to a long to a decimal. That's okay, right? Why is this okay? Why is the first line okay to do, right? Because you're going from less precise to more precise. That's okay. But if you go the other way around, from more precise to less precise, what happens is you get truncation happening, right? A number of significant digits, if I have like 15 significant digits or whatever it is, right? But then as I go down to something like a short or a long, all those digits get cut off, right? Because it becomes an integer. So all that precision that gets lost. Don't recommend that. I mean, if you're going to convert, you might as well round, right? Or just if you want to do it this way, you can. It's like what you're saying is this: if I take a byte, I don't have to use casing or casting syntax to get to that. I just have to say, this decimal variable is equal to a byte, whatever the byte length would be, and then C# would do it for you. That's implicit casting, and I don't like it. I'll tell you right now. In just general programming basics, I always try and get you to shy away from implicit casting, so that the system tries to figure out what you're trying to do on its own. Please do not think the system knows what it's doing. The system, the compiler, is dumb, right? You are the smarts behind the programming. The computer's only going to do what you tell it to do, right? For now. In the future, it might have machine learning, and then it'll tell you what to do. Yeah. You cannot see the screen. Oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Oh, they just see me somehow. I don't know. That's really weird. Let's try this again. Thank you for that. All right. Ask him now. Does he see the screen now? Because that would be a little better. Let's see what happens. Sorry, thank you for that. Because we should be broadcasting live. But he can hear me, right? And he can probably see me, right? That was weird. Hopefully that's a little better. Okay, so casting. So explicit casting, we already covered this a little bit. Notice that we use this type. And I'm going in this a little bit just from a syntax perspective. You should know what casting is, converting from one type to the other. That's what it is, right? But take a look at this. I've got an integer grade, and I want to convert this real number to an integer, and I can use this casting syntax. Yes, this is one way of doing it. What's the other way? You can parse, right? You can convert. You can use the parse and convert keywords. And C# also has something called the as keyword you can also use, right? So there's many ways of doing this cast, but this is definitely an explicit cast, basically telling the system to convert from a double or a float to an integer, which means it would just chop off the 75. That's all it's going to do. It's not going to round, right? It's just going to truncate, right? So that's casting. Now there's some other really cool built-in functions. The math round, that's a good function. Math power, so the number to the power of whatever it is, math square root. Min-max, we do that as well. It kind of takes two numbers and decides which one is maximum. That's a really useful function, yes.
Sorry to bother again, but apparently it's still just your profile picture.
Anyone else? Can you guys check it here? Like maybe it's something else, because I'm actually seeing a broadcast. Let's see if it's going to work again. That's really weird because I mean, it is reading my screen, see?
Yeah, it's just your profile picture. I got it.
Isn't that interesting? I haven't done anything different today than any other day, right? I wonder if we have a bad connection. That could be probably what it is, right? So let's do a stop. We'll stop recording just because I want to make sure I take care of the people on the other end, and I'll plug in directly. So let's do this is so just to finish off with the conversation. And what I'll do is later on, that's why I do the recording at the same time, because just in case we have an internet problem, I'll push it up later onto YouTube after the fact. I don't like doing that because it takes extra time, but if I have to, I have to. So let's stop recording now, and then we'll do another version of part 2, and when we do part 2, hopefully it'll fix the problems. And sometimes I need to reboot.